Hi everyone, and welcome to part 7 of our Introduction to Economics review series. The focus of this mini lecture is really going to be on market structures. Now, similarly to previous review mini lectures, we have a list of similar terms that we will be going through and trying to find ways that these are related with each other. So first up, we have market structure. A market structure is an economic model of the nature and degree of competition between firms within the same industry. So there are 4 primary market structures, and from most competitive to least competitive, we have perfect competition, monopolistic competition, oligopolies, and then monopolies. Now, try to use this inverted pyramid as a way to kind of indicate that as we go from most competitive to least competitive, we're going from a large number of firms to a fewer amount of firms. Now, perfect competition, this is the most competitive market structure. It's important to keep in mind here that perfect competition is not realistic, meaning that there are no real world examples of a perfectly competitive market. Now, the characteristics of perfect competition include things like many buyers and sellers, standardized products, that is to say that these products are identical between one firm to another. There are no barriers to entry, which means that firms can freely enter or exit a perfectly competitive market. And then buyers and sellers are independent, meaning that they are not actively working together in order to influence prices. Both buyers and sellers are well informed, and firms are price takers. So firms have no influence over prices. And then at the other end of the spectrum, in terms of market structures, we have a monopoly. So a monopoly is the least competitive market structure, and its characteristics include things like one seller with no close substitutes. It has the highest barriers to entry of any of the other market structures, and firms are price setters. Now, natural monopoly, this is just a naturally arising situation where it just makes sense for a monopoly to emerge. So this is going to be a situation where the costs of production are lowest when only one firm supplies a product or service, and local water companies are going to be really good examples of natural monopolies. So economies of scale is a situation where the average cost of production decreases as production increases, and local water companies, like I mentioned before, as a natural monopoly, are going to benefit from economies of scale, which is one reason why it just makes sense from a practical perspective to have a single company providing water services to a given area or region. Next up, we have cartels. This is a group of sellers that acts together in order to set prices and limit output in a given market. A successful cartel is actually going to be able to enjoy the benefits associated with being a monopolist. Now, barriers to entry, a barrier to entry is anything that can make it more challenging for a firm to enter a market. So good rule here is that lower barriers to entry generally corresponds with more competitive markets. And the higher barriers to entry that there are, we're going to see less and less competition. And that's because more firms will find themselves in a position to chase profit opportunities in markets with lower barriers to entry. So some examples of barriers to entry include things like economies of scale, startup costs, government policies, things like copyright laws, patents, anything that requires a license or a certification in order to operate or run a business. Those are all going to be examples of government policies that could act as barriers to entry. And then lastly, something like brand loyalty is also going to act as a barrier to entry because they can be challenging for new firms to enter markets and compete with firms that have already established a brand identity. Now, monopolistic competition, unlike perfect competition, this is going to be an example of a realistic competitive market structure. In monopolistic competition, there are many sellers that sell similar but not identical products. Now, one important note that I want to make here, and this is going to be important when we talk about oligopolies, is that in a monopolistically competitive market, we're going to see that market share is relatively equally distributed between firms that are operating within that given market. Now, you might have already kind of picked up on how I'm going to connect non-price competition with monopolistic competition, but monopolistic competition in the firms that operate within monopolistic competition are going to engage in what is called non-price competition. So in other words, these kinds of firms are going to rely on things like product differentiation, higher quality service, and even something like advertising is going to come into play here when it comes to these firms trying to compete for yours or my dollars. And then finally, we have oligopoly. So this is going to be a market structure where there are only a few firms that dominate the market. And so there could be more than a few firms, there could be several firms, but market share is unequally distributed. And because of this, a majority of that market share is held by the top few leading firms. This market structure is also going to have higher barriers to entry than a monopolistically competitive market structure, but it will have lower barriers to entry than a monopolistic market. So that's what I had for the part 7 of our review series. If you have any questions, please let me know. I'm always happy to help. Thank you for watching.